You gotta love a doctor who makes house calls. I am continuing on with trying to get back into Big Finish on a regular basis, and I have now listened to the second box set of Ninth Doctor stories. This one being Respond to All Calls. I liked the previous one, which was The Ravagers, but I did have some things about it that weren't my ideal, I guess would be the best way to put it. I thought the story went a little bit too big in scale and scope. It was written by Nick Briggs, who's a perfectly good writer, but a lot of his recurrent themes, favorite time periods, etc., aren't really the kinds of things that I naturally gravitate towards. But it was just great to hear Eccleston back in the part, and he slipped into it really well. This honestly was much more what I had hoped for the last box set, and I'm really happy to have it now. Funny, like I noted last time that Eccleston slips right back into this part. He's somehow even more at ease this time around than even the first time, and I didn't think it sounded like he was having any issue transitioning to a completely audio medium last time, so it's even better here in terms of his performance and just how well he gets back into this part and channels everything that I loved about this incarnation of the Doctor. And as far as the overall scale and scope, well, the title of the box set kind of gives you an idea. This is not a big continuous story that builds from each one into some grander thing. This is 3 separate contained stories where the Doctor gets some kind of sense of distress and goes and helps somebody, which is what I love the Doctor doing most, just in general. So it's already doing my favorite thing for the Doctor to do, just going, oh, someone's in trouble. Let's look into that. So it's already getting me in a real good place. And I was gonna say the quality. It's not necessarily the quality. My enjoyment went a little up and down. First one, which is Girl Deconstructed, I liked quite a bit. And that one does some interesting things in terms of how it kind of plays with the idea of ghosts, but without really necessarily having it be ghosts. But it sort of plays off that idea and those tropes. And also has a really, I think, good family dynamic kind of at the heart of it. And there is a police officer, and she is a really good character who bounces really well off the Doctor. Oh, it's worth noting, I'd said at the end of the last box set I did that I had assumed and kind of hoped that Nova from that set would continue to travel with the Doctor. That didn't happen. Apparently, everyone's kind of on record with feeling that it doesn't make, in terms of where the Ninth Doctor was as a character, it doesn't really make sense for him to take an ongoing companion prior to Rose, because taking on Rose for as long as he did was a big part of just his own character journey. And I can respect that, and I can absolutely understand it, and it's honestly probably the right call. I still would have liked a little bit more of him with Nova, but obviously we can't have everything, and I have to concede to the validity of that aspect. But a lot of the characters that he's given to play off of, he gets a good rapport with, and that's very much the case in Girl Deconstructed. So I like that one a lot. The second one was the one I liked the least. That one was Fright Motif. And it basically had 2 main things kind of working against it. The first is that the premise sort of, it works a lot with the idea of sound, yet the actual end result doesn't do all that much to take advantage of the fact that it's in a purely audio medium. I mean, even the 2 stories that buffet it in this box set sort of do more to take advantage of the format that they're in than this does. And this actually has sound as a core element of its story, which is, it's strange to me that I could very easily just imagine this being done as a standard episode. I mean, Girl Deconstructed, you could have, but I think the way that they used audio to convey a lot of the sense of sort of displacement and that sort of sense of speaking and not being heard, and the way that was done in audio, really, it lent into the format very well. And we'll get to the third one, but that one sort of got into a wonderfully sort of out there ideas that for a story that is ultimately not the biggest in scope ever, it still would have involved visuals that would have been unreasonable to try and recreate in the visual medium, and that is a different way of taking advantage of audio. But the fright motif kind of doesn't. I found myself actually thinking a fair bit on the well, it's a book actually. I think of it as an audio, Doctor Who Dead Air, which I listened to ages ago as an audiobook read by David Tennant. And it was actually bizarre for me to find out that that had originally been a book, because that does so much with the audio format. And again, in a story where the nature of sound is very much at the heart of what's being told. So again, it's strange to me here that that's like in the story, but not in the presentation. So that's the first thing that kind of dinged this one a little bit for me. The other one is unfortunately the one of the aspects of the performance for the main human character. Now, this is a character named Artie Berger. The actor is Damian Lynch. And I want to cite right now that I did look a little bit more into Damian Lynch, and he's a very good actor. Like, I've checked out some of his other stuff, because I'm always because as somebody who like tried to get into acting and would like to get into voice work again at some point, I'm very cautious about just saying that somebody gave a bad performance, because it lends the idea that like, well, they're just a bad actor, and that's rarely the case if they've gotten a professional gig like this. And he's not a bad actor; he's quite good. His performance in this is, however, hampered a bit, and it's because they have him do an American accent. And so there's two things about that. I have noted in the past with some of these that when I hear folks from the UK doing American accents, it just sounds off to me. Now, part of that's just because like I'm American, so I have sort of an instinctive ear for it, and it kind of becomes an auditory version of the Uncanny Valley, where it's like, all right, I get what that's supposed to be, but it's not. That's not quite right. But that isn't really the issue here. I mean, like, it's there a little bit, but having an imperfect accent doesn't always hamper the performance. I mean, I like Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. His American accent is not great, but I still enjoy it. Here, what it feels like, and again, I am going to say this is just my interpretation based off what I'm hearing and having looked into other work that Damian Lynch has done, and knowing that he's perfectly capable of a very strong performance. The performance comes across as a bit flat, and what it feels like to my ear is that so much focus was going into maintaining the accent that his resources as an actor were kind of coming up short in the actual performance. Too much emphasis was put on keep the accent that it just wasn't building the character as strongly. There were a lot of line readings that I'm like, I feel like there should have been more behind it. And then I realized partway listening, well, he almost sounds distracted. And I have to wonder if it's because the actor was distracted by having to maintain that accent. And the thing that's really weird about it is it wasn't necessary. Not unnecessary in the sense that the character didn't have to be American. Actually, the character being American does have narrative function and a reason to be there. But rather, it's set in Paris. And the French characters are also done by UK performers, and they have English accents. But the story actually kind of hangs a lampshade on it. There's like a throwaway line from Eccleston talking about how the way that the TARDIS is translating it into his head is just giving it that accent. Why couldn't you just do that for the character of Artie? And so that you weren't hampering your performer by making him do an American accent. I mean, you literally built in a narrative device that meant he didn't have to do the American accent. You still had him do the American accent. I don't know. And like the story overall, it's pretty good. The other characters are quite good. I have some reservations about one particular bit that happens towards the end. I might have to do a quick spoiler note on that. But again, that's a bit more of a personal preference. It's still decent. It's not bad, but it is the weak one of the three in this set. Still good, still worth listening to, but I found myself lingering on its faults because it wasn't working as well as the others. Now, the last one, Planet of the End, is this is what I come to Big Finish for. This last one is mwah. The ideas are really kind of out there. And I almost wonder, I mean, I said like some of the visuals that would have been involved in trying to create this in the show would have exceeded the budget, if nothing else. But also, like, even aside from that, the concepts I think would have been harder to understand if you're taking in the visuals. Just listening to it, you're like, okay, I'm listening to these ideas. Let me process these ideas. If I was trying to process these ideas at the same time as trying to process the visuals, I might not have followed what was going on as well, but it does work here. And there's so many wonderful ideas with this whole thing of this planet just being just the entire planet is a cemetery. And it's not just about individual people, it's entire species laid to rest here. And there's like this sort of security robot that gets the name Fred that is sort of monitoring things and making sure nobody is disturbed. But the doctor shows up again, having gotten a distress signal. First of all, Fred is amazing. I love Fred so much. The development of this artificial intelligence character it's so good. It is so good. And then there's all these terrific ideas in terms of what some of the civilizations that have been laid to rest here are thought to be, what they actually were, the nature of the actual distress signal that the doctor is answering. It tiptoes up to the line of going just a little bit too big in scope at the very end, but it doesn't quite cross it, at least to my taste. And it does a certain type of social commentary towards the end, which I'm also very much here for, and I won't say because it's a spoiler, which I guess means let me talk spoilers real quick on all three. So that's your warning. All right. So spoiler time. Girl deconstructed this whole idea of like the sense that somebody's there, but nobody's there, that feeling of a ghost in the room. I think that's the kind of thing that works really well when Doctor Who kind of pulls on that, like, let's explore that feeling. Kind of a bit like how something like the original conception of the Weeping Angels was. Do you ever get that feeling that a statue's watching you? Do you ever feel like that's not quite in the same position it was before? And just pulling on that feeling and going, okay, what if we give a reason and a name to that? And this does something similar with sort of the idea of ghosts, or like, I almost swore I heard a voice, or I swore I heard somebody moving around, but I went up and there was nobody there. And it uses that feeling that is, I think, a pretty well understood one for most people to bring in a sci-fi concept and examine it. And it doesn't necessarily negate the idea of actual ghosts, but it does use the general sense a lot of us have of them to just tell an interesting story. With Fright Motif, I mentioned the thing towards the end that bugged me a little bit. There's the character of Maurice, who is an interesting character, actually. He is established to be gay. He had a lover who passed away, presumably as part of the French Resistance, because it's set in the aftermath of World War II. I don't love that he sacrifices himself for the other characters at the end, because it didn't feel like a natural, like he was somebody who, like, yeah, he was a little bit of a prick, but he didn't need redemption. And I've done a video on the main channel about my issues of redemption through death, which those exact issues don't necessarily land with him here, but like, it's just something that he didn't require redemption. There was no need for him to die. And it felt very rote. It felt like, well, we've got three characters, let's have somebody sacrifice themselves. And he drew the short straw. And it doesn't help my opinion that he is the explicitly gay character, but I don't know. It just, for me, and the kinds of things I tend to talk about and what some of my hang-ups and or tropes that I'm tired of tend to be, that just kind of hit a nerve in a annoying way, that one. But okay, the last one, I said it dealt with certain social commentary that I really like, which is anti-capitalism. Anti-corporate mentality, because ultimately the villains of that last one turn out to be this ancient race that was the worst kind of hyper-capitalist And their entire, like, they preserve their consciousness, even though all their bodies are dead. But their entire mentality of viewing everything is through the lens of brand, profit, acquisition. The language they use, it makes you feel so skeevy just hearing them talk about lives that way. And it makes them so hateable so immediately. It's and like, it's not the main focus of the story, but like, it's integrated and woven in a way that enhances them as villains. I really enjoy that. I like this box set a lot, and I think I'm far more likely to re-listen to this than to the Ravagers. And I did enjoy the Ravagers, but like this, that last one especially, this is what I come to Big Finish for, and it made me very happy. Respond to all calls, Ninth Doctor Adventures. Have you listened to it? What'd you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon's what pays the bills, allows me to do this as my living. Any amount you can support me there helps. Don't worry too much about it, though, because like, share, and subscribe also help me out. Don't know when I'll get to more of this stuff, but it is hard to put down. So maybe sooner, maybe later, we'll see. But what I really want you to do is just try and take it easy, because we take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can come on back next time you need a break. Well, it's Patreon supporter shout-out time, folks. So thank you to Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfulla, Tarak, The Thing That Goes Doink in the Anime, Oliver B., Angus Bjarnason, Melinda Walters, Emu Delkey, Theotha Boyd, Toy Lowly, Becky Spark, Vernabulax the Poodle, Zach, Tracy Scrabbit, General Contact Unit Problem Child, Angry Gasperl, Tim Price, Adam R.D.L. Taylor, Shayla Gourlay, and Brendan LaRose. Thanks so much for your help. You can get your name read out too. Check out the rewards in the Patreon. Is that what they should do? Should they check the Patreon?